Today I'd like to discuss with you briefly what an effective rate is. Quite simply put, an effective rate is the percentage that you pay to process your credit cards when all of the costs have been factored in. It's a very easy thing to figure out for a merchant. If you look on your merchant month-end statement that you receive from your credit card processor, and you take the total amount of fees that have been debited out of your account, divide that by the volume of the sales for that same month, and you're going to come up with an effective rate. Often when we talk to merchants, they'll ask you, well, what's your rate? And one of the common responses that we hear from a lot of our competitors, and especially when we see it online or in print, is rates as low as 1.29 or 1.19. While that may be true for a particular card type, usually a debit or a check card, because they typically have the lowest cost, that doesn't mean that that's what a merchant pays for all of the transactions. Business cards cost more than non-business cards. Reward cards cost more than non-reward cards. Credit cards typically cost more for a merchant to process than a debit card. So at the end of the day, if someone tells you, well, my rate is 1.49, what they're really saying is my rate for a particular type of card transaction is 1.49%. The effective rate is the only rate that matters at the end of the day. If you decide that you're going to shop for your merchant services and you want to compare cost, the only thing that matters is the effective rate. I can't tell you how often we've had a merchant that has been with us, and we don't put our merchants in contract, so they're free to shop around, and if they decide to move to another company, that is their right. That they've gotten their first statement in and they found out that they're actually paying more than they were for our service. What's a good effective rate? For a retail business, a restaurant, 2.2, 2.3% is probably pretty good. If you're a business that accepts credit cards in a card not present environment, it's going to be higher, 2.5%, maybe 3.5%. If you do business exclusively with other businesses, you're probably going to have the highest effective rate of most businesses, because business cards cost more than most other credit cards to process. So typically you could be pushing 3%. One thing I would like to mention is American Express cards. American Express sets their rates, and there's no credit card processor out there that's going to be able to offer you a better rate on American Express. So oftentimes it's a good idea when looking at your effective rate is to pull out the fees that were charged for American Express and also the sales volume for American Express when making this calculation. What merchant service providers do control is the amount that they mark up your Visa, MasterCard, and Discover transactions. So it usually makes good sense to look at the total fees charged for those cards divided by the total sales for those cards to determine what your effective rate is.